The next story was inspired by a notorious case revolving around a man named Tim. Most of you have heard of this individual, but for those who haven't, here's an animation inspired by the events revolving around him. 4 years have passed since I married my first wife, Emma, a kind and beautiful woman. After getting married, we lived in Greensboro, where she aided me in running the ice cream shop and miniature golf course as my accountant. One day, I called the ambulance to report a drowning incident. When they arrived at the house and asked what had happened to my wife, I told them she was a heavy drinker. We were both having a good time in our hot tub. I asked her to stop drinking, however, she persuaded me to just have one more bottle. Then I went to the restroom inside the house to answer the call of nature. When I got back out to the backyard, she had dropped the bottle, and I found her lifeless body submerged in the tub. Emma! No! No, 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 no! As I grieved for her over time, I met Lilibeth along the way, who was generous enough to lend me a bit of spare time whenever I needed someone to talk to. Eventually, I had to move on, and now I'm happily married to my second wife, Lilibeth. One day, Lily and I were enjoying ourselves in the hot tub. I didn't want the death of my first wife to discourage myself or Lily from getting in one. I had finally gotten closure as time went on, but one night, my wife began pulling my arm with an anxious look. At first, I thought that she was feeling unwell, so I asked her, "What's the matter, dear?"
I think someone's watching us through the fence,"
she said, her eyes restless. Concerned about my wife's well-being, I left the tub and put on my bathrobe to check on the fence. When I came closer, I found a small hole that made it possible for someone to take a peek. My neighbor's house was on the other side of the fence, where an old man lived by himself. My wife and I didn't have the chance to interact with him because he often secluded himself. I decided to cover the hole with a short wooden plank that I had in the garage. The following day, I walked along the sidewalk when the old man caught me off guard and said, "How was the hot tub?" Defensive over the way he invaded our privacy, I cussed him and said, "Mind your own business, you old geezer." Outraged, he replied, "You better watch your back, son, you hear me?" Peeved and bewildered, I asked, "Excuse me? Did you just threaten me?" He glared at me without saying anything, before heading back inside the house. I didn't want to alarm my beloved wife, so I decided to keep it to myself. Late in the afternoon, my wife and I dipped into the hot tub, gazing at the sky as the sun set. But for some reason, I was perturbed. It seemed like I saw my neighbor using binoculars, looking in our direction. When I rose from the tub to have a closer look, I saw him step away from the second-floor window, turning off the lights in his room. My wife, somewhat agitated, asked me,
"What is it, dear? Why are you looking at our neighbor's house?"
After making sure he was no longer peering through the windows, I gradually returned to my wife in the tub and replied, "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." The next day, I intentionally dropped by my neighbor's house after work. I needed to let him know the discomfort he was causing my wife and I. Stepping out into the veranda, the old geezer held a butcher knife in one hand, staring at me with eyes ablaze. "What do you want, son?" the old man asked apprehensively. "And what do you plan to do with that knife?" I replied, straining my words. He chortled, then said, "What I do with my knife is none of your business, boy. There are other things you should be worrying about." Before things got out of hand, I warned him, "If you ever interfere with my wife and I or lay a single finger on her, I will not hesitate to call the police. You got that, you old man?" I stepped back slowly as I watched him walk away without saying another word. "Get the hell off my property, or I am calling the cops!" That night, I decided to go into the hot tub with my wife, telling her that I had finally confronted the old man. My wife seemed trepidatious at first, but was soon relieved when I reassured her that nothing was to worry about. Then, my wife playfully invited me to a little game to which she said,
"Stop paying attention to the old geezer and pay attention to me. Want to see who can hold their breath the longest underwater?"
Although I felt a little uneasy seeing how Emma had passed, I didn't want to spoil the mood. So I asked, "Sounds like fun. What brought this up all of a sudden?" Lilibeth chuckled, batting her eyelashes flirtatiously.
Well, we've been under a lot of stress lately, and I just wanted to alleviate all that.
I told myself. I furtively glanced at my neighbor's window and noticed that all the lights were out. Finally, my wife and I were left alone in peace. I offered to go first. All right, here goes. I curled up into a coil and submerged my entire body. Underwater, I could hear Lilibeth's muffled voice counting.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi.
Until she eventually reached the number 10. Then I raised my hand to signal that I was already out of breath. As soon as my head resurfaced, Lilibeth said, with a wink,
I'm sure I can do better than that.
I raised an eyebrow, grinned, and said, I'm sure you can, dear. I have a deal. If you manage to go past 10, I'll buy you your favorite orchids. She nodded in delight. As soon as she submerged, I counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, until I reached 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi. I just kept repeating the number 9 until she signaled me to stop so she could gasp for air. But then I told her, we're not at number 10 yet. You still want those orchids, don't you? The splashing continued for a few more seconds until she no longer moved. Moments later, as I clothed myself in a bathrobe, someone rang the doorbell. When I asked who it was, he identified himself as the police. Upon opening the door, 5 cops stormed the house and arrested me after finding Lilibeth's floating body. Later on, I was convicted of first-degree murder, even when I said that my late wife drowned due to excessive alcohol intake. On the witness stand was my neighbor, the old man who said he recognized me as the person who killed my first wife, Emma, by strangling her in the tub. Later on, an autopsy examination was presented in court, proving that I killed Lilibeth.
I think of myself as hotter than the average girl, but I'm not vain. Other people are allowed to disagree that I'm hotter than them if they want to. Of course, they never do, because why would they? Most people who lay eyes on me tend to have trouble taking their eyes off me, so you really can't call me snobby for noticing the attention that I'm getting. It's not even exclusively men that seem drawn to me. Women give me eyes too, and not just glares of jealousy, though I get plenty of those as well. I guess some women just hate to see me flaunt what I've got. While some people feel gross when random creeps stare at them, I actually feel rejuvenated by some longing looks from strangers. There's an indoor pool facility attached to my local gym that I go to almost every day. Those glutes don't pump themselves, you know. But while I love exercising to maintain my sculpted body, my favorite part about going to the gym is getting in the hot tub and relaxing after a good workout. There are always tons of people in the pool area, and the hot tub is in a corner that can be seen from any spot in the facility, which means there's always eyes on me. Plus, I always change into a bikini after my workout. It's hard to describe just how euphoric the experience of dipping into that warm, bubbly water is for me. But recently, there's been a problem with my routine. There's a man that's been coming to the pool recently. An incredibly fat and ugly man, too. Because of him, I'm no longer as comfortable in my happy place as I once was. It's not that I necessarily needed to be alone in the tub to be comfortable, don't misunderstand me. If there's a cute boy in the tub with me, that's just gravy for the both of us. And of course, I'm always respectful to the random strangers and senior citizens who come to the tub on occasion for therapeutic reasons. But with this man, it's different. Very different. His name is Willie, and he's here almost every day. At least he's here every day that I'm here. And because he seems to make no effort to shed any of the disgusting bags of fat wrapped around his body, he never goes to the gym. Which means he's almost always posted up in the tub long before I'm done with my workout and ready to relax. And because he's such a gigantic slob, there's barely any space in the hot tub for anyone else when he's in it. The tub is meant to comfortably fit 6 people at once, even up to 8 normal-sized people. But Willie makes it look like a personal bathtub. Unfortunately, the only space left in the tub after he gets in is one little spot directly across from him. And even then, my knees are always butting up against his stomach. I bet he wishes he could be even fatter so that there would be no space at all left for anyone else. I'm still not fazed by it though. I've dealt with my fair share of gross men, and I've long been done with freaking out and acting like a prima donna just because someone is covered in cellulite. I'm a grown woman, you know. I have a great deal of composure. Hey there, hot stuff.
Can it, Willie?
Well, guess you're not talking to me again. Girl, we spend so much time together, it just ain't right that I don't even know your name. Don't you think?
If I told you my name, that would imply that I enjoy your company. And I don't. I wish you would leave and stop hogging the damn tub every day.
Suit yourself. I'm actually a pretty interesting guy if you ever decide to give me the time of day, but I'm not going anywhere. This is my tub as far as I'm concerned. Trust me, there is a lot I could say to Willie, but I try my hardest to bite my tongue whenever I can in order to say as little to him as possible. I don't want us to start having real conversations, even if they're completely negative. Otherwise, Willie might start to get the fantastic idea that he has a chance with me, but he'll never have that. Every day when I came in, I would see him cause tsunami-like waves from the cannonballs he formed at the pool, but then he would eventually hog the tub, giving up any hope for others to enjoy it. I would just sit myself down in that one little corner he can't fill and enjoy myself in absolute spite of him. Every day he tries to talk to me, and every day I stonewall him and get what I want despite his best efforts otherwise. I think this has been a regular thing for about 2 months now. Things have gotten a little intense. I actually spend more time in the hot tub than I ever used to. It's a matter of principle. Willie sits in there the whole day without considering that other people want to enjoy it as well. So when I get in there with him, I feel like I can't leave until he leaves, or I would be admitting to supremacy over the hot tub. And I know that's ridiculous, but you should see the way he talks to people who dare to ask him to share. I'm doing this for all the patrons of the hot tub. I have to win. I have to knock that pig down a few pegs. But I do have to say, I never thought it would come to what it has. Last night, Willie just wouldn't shut up. He kept telling me to leave the hot tub. You should just give up, Miss Mellons. You're not gonna win this war, so get used to seeing this 6-pack of flap every day. Better leave while you can, or else I'll unleash my secret weapon. I was deep in the trenches of utterly ignoring him. I had no idea he was serious, but after he lobbed that threat a few times, he really did it. All of a sudden, the water started getting warmer. Then I noticed a discolored yellowish cloud floating up from underneath Willie's stomach. And that's when I knew he was pissing in the tub.
Yuck! What the hell is wrong with you?
Willie just laughed. I hate that laugh so much. It was perhaps the most disgusting thing I ever did, and I only did it to spite him. But I stayed. Slowly the heat dissipated, but that's when the smell hit me. But when I thought that I'd have this victory by pinching my nose, Willie played his trump card, and it went from bad to worse. He leaned over for a second and farted, sending some bubbles rising to the top. But right behind the bubbles was something else. The yellow turned to a murky, frothy brown, followed by a few chunks of... oh god, I hate remembering this part. A few chunks of turds. Willie was just chuckling, soiling my happy place with his feces.
Oh my god!
I jumped out as quickly as I could, but it was all stuck to me. So I ran to the showers as Willie laughed behind me in victory. That's when I knew this had to end. I had an ingenious idea while I rinsed off Willie's secret weapon. The next morning, I arrived earlier than ever. I had to make sure I got there before Willie. I let him think he had won, deciding to take a dip in the pool and swim around instead of claiming the hot tub. When he arrived, he made straight for the hot tub. He stared at me as he sat down into it, looking smugger than he ever had before. He smiled and laughed out loud, spinning around in his winning way, creating a little whirlpool in the jet foam. But his laughs didn't last long. Soon, he started to get agitated for an apparently unknown reason. He started scratching all over his arms and legs like he just jumped into a pile of poison ivy. Pretty soon, his skin started turning all red, forming boils and blisters everywhere. But because I didn't take my eyes off it, he didn't dare leave the tub, because that would mean defeat after all he had done to win. Then, he started to bleed. The blood came from his eyes, his nose, his mouth, and especially from all the freshly opened wounds now covering his body. I think at some point he did try to crawl out, but by then the water was a dark, turbid red. I think his legs were probably reduced to bone by then. Once the water got over his head, it was over. He gurgled and thrashed quite a bit, but all ineffectually. But because I didn't take my eyes off him, he didn't dare leave the tub, because that would mean defeat after all he had done to win. I certainly enjoyed watching it all go down, and all I had to do was get in the facility before it opened and pour in the right combination of acids and catalytic enzymes while nobody was looking. See, I might look like a dim-witted floozy with a rockin' body, but in reality, I'm a force to be reckoned with a rockin' body.
This story was inspired by a case that occurred in a home at Hucknall, Nottinghamshire. This was a house party gone bad, as tempers flared up between a couple that resulted in a fatal tragedy. When you combine alcohol, females, and of course a hot tub, you are bound to have a good time. But in this case, it was all but that. Here's what it looked like. One day, my office mate, Sophia, invited me to her house party that would transpire on a Friday evening. She lived with her boyfriend in a typical American wooden home about 2,300 square feet. On her Instagram account, they seemed to be a lovely couple. On the night of the event, I came to her house wearing shorts and a sparkling top. There were tons of people there, so I had to squeeze myself in. While I finally made it through the thick crowd, I saw Sophia filling a glass of beer at the food table. I snuck up behind her, startling her in the process.
Whoa, someone's a bit edgy tonight,
I said, patting her on the back.
A bit.
She replied, a little self-conscious.
This is the first time I'm hosting a party. This is all James' idea, you see?
No wonder.
I said while mixing myself a margarita.
By the way, when can I meet him?
Scratching her head, she replied in a lackadaisical manner.
Well, you can meet him anytime. If you can find him amidst this crowd, that is.
Something seemed to be bothering Sophia. I felt it in my gut. But I was reluctant to ask her because it didn't seem like the proper time. This was a party, and we had to make the most of it. Hence, I pulled Sophia to the dance floor, attempting to uplift her spirits. For a moment, we were actually having fun, as she laughed every now and then. However, something seemed to have caught her eye as she gazed at the second-floor window. I couldn't see what she was looking at, but she immediately left me without a word.
Hey, wait up! What's the matter?
I asked, feeling concerned. She turned to me with anxiety in her tone and said,
I'm just a little exhausted. That's all. I'll get some medication from my room upstairs, then come back down. So go ahead and enjoy the party.
Okay, if you say so.
I replied apprehensively, allowing her to scurry into the house. Then, moments later, I followed her in. I made my way up the stairs as silently as I could. As I set foot on the second floor, I found a door that was slightly open and saw that the room was empty. I went inside and hid in the closet when I heard footsteps fast approaching. Moments later, I saw Sophia enter the room, yanking a man who might have been James.
What the hell were you thinking, smooching another woman like that? And in my house?
Sophia berated. Your house? This is my house too, you know? He said with a series of hiccups. And since this is my house, I can do whatever I want. He turned away and went for the balcony door. What is your problem? I covered my mouth to keep from gasping out loud at the scene. They've always seemed like such a happy couple. As soon as he left, I exited the closet. I tried to console her. She stood up gingerly and replied,
It's nothing. I told you to just go back to the party, didn't I? This is none of your business.
As she turned her back on me, I replied,
Where are you going?
She glared at me and said,
I'm going to bed.
Then, she left the room, slamming the door behind her. Instead of going back downstairs, I went to the balcony to blend in with the other guests who were drinking and chatting. There, I saw James mingling with a couple of party girls. They held their drinks as they danced in a flirtatious manner. Moments later, two of the girls in a bikini who jumped into the hot tub gestured for him to join them and two other guys. James was delighted and immensely drunk. All right, ladies! I've been waiting to do this all night, and now I'm finally doing it! James started to remove his boxers while the women in the hot tub were cheering for him, repeatedly saying,
Take it off.
Take it off. Take it
off.
off.
Take it off.
James, stop! You're not seriously thinking about skinny dipping in the tub with those girls, are you?
Sophia bellowed as she peeked from the bedroom window. Seeing that James wasn't paying attention to her, she climbed out the window, stepped on the balcony floor, and said,
Don't you dare, James!
James continued to ignore her and skinny dipped in the tub. His other companions laughed as they playfully invited Sophia to join them. Disgusted, she left the balcony and went back inside the house. Moments later, all the lights and music went out, including the power to the hot tub. The crowd was confused and a few girls screamed. Just when it was starting to get lively out here, James hollered aloud as the drunken girls giggled. Don't worry, ladies. Sophia must have flicked the master switch on the fuse box. I got this. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back, okay? The girls tittered once more as James left the tub and went inside the house, still naked. Convinced that I finally had enough of this party, I decided to go back downstairs and head back home. Unfortunately, it seemed like some of the other guests inside the house were thinking of doing the same thing, as a few dozen of them started leaving the party. I thought of using the restroom first before leaving, but before doing so, I noticed that another door next to it was open. For a moment, it seemed as though I had heard someone scream. So, I used my cell phone flashlight and went down to the basement, where James or someone else could have gotten into an accident. Reaching the basement floor, my flashlight caught trickles of blood. I followed the trail and said,
Hello? Does anyone need help?
What I saw next took me by surprise. Arriving at the corner where the fuse box was, I saw a pool of blood and James's lifeless body on the pavement. Sophia was constantly stabbing him with a kitchen knife, ripping out his guts. Her eyes were round and ominous, and her grin was sinister. As she gradually stood to her feet, I made a run for it up the stairs and hollered,
Someone help, please! Sophia stabbed James! Help! Sophia stabbed James! Sophia stabbed James! Help!
As I made it up the stairs, I noticed basically everyone had already left and gone home. With my trembling hands, I called the police. They arrived quickly and Sophia was arrested. However, I will never forget the contempt and hatred in her eyes. Since that frightful night, I haven't been to other house parties.
You should just give up, Miss Mellons. You're not gonna win this war, so get used to seeing this six-pack of flap every day. Better leave while you can, or else I'll unleash my secret weapon.